talk is going to be elementary some of the time for some of the people in the room. Because you're amazing. You are the best of the brightest. We do a marvelous job of collecting these folks, I gotta say. And so it's my honor to be here. I'm sorry if I say things you already know, but since we are this whole group of different disciplines, it's one of the hardest things is to all get on the same page. So here we go. Well, that's light. What happened there? It was in the.
Sorry, I'm trying to
adjust it.
Okay, this is
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, this is less like the move.
Now they can see you.
So this is, you know how you put this slide at the end of your talks? I don't do that anymore because then I forget to show it. So mobile health, mHealth is a team science. As Vivek said, as we'll say again and again, it takes not a village, it takes an entire earth. And so I just want to thank all the people on the various teams that I've worked on whose knowledge has contributed to all the stuff that I've ripped off to show you today. So this is a cumulative program, and we're going to start here with behavior. The road to any health outcome is usually paved with behavior. You have to be specific and precise in defining what behaviors you want to work with, and we'll talk about how you get there. So I'm an obesity researcher, so everything I talk about that's kind of the test bed, that's my example. But you can fill it up any way you want to. And obesity really rests like on 4 legs. Stress, sleep, exercise, and what's the 4th one? Yes, thank you. 10 points to the man over there. And diet. There's some guiding principles about what influences behavior. So I know that any behaviors in the room has already thought about this, but maybe there's one new thing up there that you haven't thought about. So emotion, to me, is one of the top ones. We live in the time of the cognitive mafia where everything is cognitive science. I don't buy into that. 10 more points to that. I like you. Then there is cognition, which matters, although we don't have the kind of control that the cognitive mafia thinks we do. There's your personal characteristics that matter. I behave differently as a Jewish princess of a certain age than you might, for instance. It's your social environments and friends, the natural and built environment, the more macro scale social environment, which we won't discuss, and he who shall not be named shall not be brought up today. You with me? Yeah. Your own behavior influences your behavior, right? Habits, habit formation, what I did yesterday. If I stayed up too late last night, which I didn't, and had 1 whiskey too much, which I didn't, I would be unhappy today, but I was smart. I'm going to do that tonight, though. And then your genes and your metabolic health influences your behavior. So we've shown that kids with higher levels of insulin resistance, women, girls, are particularly less active. Their physical activity declines because they've got this metabolic issue that's really blocking it in many ways. So these are the guide. Did I forget anything? Am I missing a major guiding principle? Think about it. There's so many. I tried to get them all. There are many, over 100 theories of behavior. We'll talk, for those of you who are looking at me going, what do you mean theory of behavior? I'll show you in a minute. I'm not going to go over them all. I thought I don't get that much time. But Susan Mickey has done a fantastic job of thinking about theories and putting them all together in this primer and thinking about different ways that we can use those theories to change behavior. And that's just available for purchase. So I want to go over some key terms. Behavioral theories 101. You might have heard these before. I think it's really important that we are all on the same page. So I'm not going to say my definitions are definitive, but they're the ones I'm using, and you should know how I'm thinking. And maybe it'll help you to sort of clarify your own thoughts when you're working in a team. So a theory is a formalized set of concepts, organizes observation and inferences, and explains and predicts behavior and outcomes. It's sometimes called a conceptual model. A model, to me, is not the thing with balls and arrows. A model, to me, is something computational. So I think to keep a theory and model get used interchangeably, and I think that's done in disservice to our field. So where you guys want to start is a theory, and where you want to get to is a model, right? So the construct, this is 101 for behavioral scientists, sorry, but I'll be right with you. The construct is the idea of the thing, right? Eating, we'll talk about that in a minute. The variable is how you measure it. So your construct might have the same name as my construct, but your variable might look entirely different. Agreed? Does that make sense? And then there's the mechanism of action. So every time I get to the mechanism of action, I write Eric an email and say, how do we define this again? But now it's in a paper, so I just took it out of the paper. But it's what mediates the effect of the intervention on the behavioral outcome. So let's say I'm intervening on walking, and my behavioral outcome is walking, right? And I intervene by sending you nice messages or telling you that you're really capable. The mechanism of action might be increasing your feelings of confidence, and that's what makes it easier for you to walk in the face of odds like over 100-degree weather, or over 100 degrees under 100 degrees, you know what I mean? So mechanism of action is something that you really have to think about when you're developing an intervention. Now, let's talk about a behavioral theory. Here's an example. This is my favorite, self-determination theory. We know this theory? Some of you? Okay, well, the self-determination theory says, and these are all constructs, not variables, right? That relatedness, autonomy, so feeling related to people, feeling autonomous or in control, and having enough support leads to perceived confidence, so I can do it, which helps me self-regulate, so which helps me get out there and take that walk. This is motivating for me. And that all of this put together leads to behavior change. So this is one of my favorite theories. What's wrong with this theory? It's a one-way ticket. It's like from A to Z. It's also quite static. And I don't know about this one. Those of you who've heard me talk before may not close your eyes for the next 3 minutes. But that's not how my behavior works. How about you? No. My behavior is easy. So let's talk about me and my behavior, which is one of my favorite topics. And let's talk about chocolate dark. So what you see here on this axis is, this is time, right? And this is, how much of a thing, right? You with me? All right. This is my desire to eat chocolate, but it changes over the day, right? So it bounces around. Now, if I add proximity to chocolate, what's going to happen? Now, those also bounce around. So, here we are in the evening. I really want chocolate, and there's chocolate in the bowl right next to my chair. What's going to happen?
You're going to eat it.
I'm going to eat it. Yes, I'm so going to eat that chocolate. Okay. Now let's add something. Let's add stress. So this also fluctuates through the day. Here they are all fluctuating, and then we get to the evening, and I'm really not so interested in chocolate, but my stress is up a little bit, and there's chocolate nearby. Am I going to eat it?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. This is a borderline case, right? Because this isn't that high. Okay, let's move on. Let's add Darcy. Now, Darcy is my best California friend. Darcy loves chocolate. So Darcy's going to come over. Here I am, it's late afternoon, and I really want chocolate. It's near me, but I would have to get up and go in the other room. I'm a little stressed, though. And then Darcy comes over. Do we eat chocolate together? Heck yes, right? So you can see, this is kind of what happens. I could give you a 2-hour talk just adding bouncy things, right? Because so many things matter in this equation. And it depends on how they bounce and if they will influence one another. So if I had in this scenario, for instance, if I had not so much desire of chocolate, and Darcy came over but my stress was high, I still might have eaten it. But if I didn't have any stress and Darcy came over, we were both feeling strong and there wasn't any chocolate around and weren't stressed, we might not have. So all these things interact differently together, given in time, over time, right? Okay, enough of this. But we need some new guiding principles. You will agree with me, I'm sure. We need new means for continuous behavioral and physiological monitoring and momentary self-reports, and we're slowly gathering those. I have to laugh, that's because when we first gave this training in 2011, which was a while ago, a lot of these things were just nascent. So every year, and most of the trainees have maybe seen one, and now you've all seen them all. But I still have to sort of put it all together for you so that you remember that it's still evolving. We've got the wearables, deployables, invisibles, chemical sensing, digital breadcrumbs, cell phones, and of course the game changer, still blowing my mind every day, is the mobile phone, is the smartphone. Because it can do so much and it does so much more constantly all the time. That's my smartphone. It's all the way over there. I'm never that far away from it. That is a stronger computer than the thing I did my dissertation on, I'm just saying. And it's data hungry. It's got all of these different capacities. It can get ambient light, proximity to other phones. I've got a camera on there. There's an accelerometer on there that's pretty damn good by now. Gyroscopes, GPS, microphones, email, text. The phone knows everybody I talk to. The phone, if you want to personify the phone for a moment, knows everything I say in my emails. It's all right there, right? And it integrates with wearables and deployables and ingestibles so that all of this can be happening. We can understand it in real time and we can intervene on it in real time. So this Internet of Things really gives us global health to the 4th dimension, right? We can monitor, model, modify, and maintain health-related behaviors in real time and in context. And if there's one message I want to give you, that's context is king. Context really matters. I would not be standing up in this dress at 8:15 in the morning if I wasn't here. Believe you me. Okay, key term, dynamic model. This takes into account the momentary and longitudinal changes in your constructs, in the relationships between the constructs, within person fluctuations, and the influence of shifting contexts on these. Okay, so I'm now going to put this up, and Daniel's going to explain this to you. But this is an idea of a dynamic behavioral model. Let me just play with it for a minute. Daniel will tell you the real truth about this, but I'm just going to give you a taste. So how many of you have seen these? Okay, 5. So what you see is these are like water tanks, right? And they fill up or they empty during the day. And when they fill up to a certain level, they spill into the next behavior, right? So maybe my self-efficacy for taking a walk, which is my obsession, is really high this morning because I didn't drink too much last night. And I did get up and have breakfast, and I got the black dress going, and I can do it. By the end of the day, that might have changed. So these tanks ebb and flow throughout the day. This is one way of thinking about behavior. And these tanks then influence one another. There's much more complicated stuff going on there that Daniel will explain to you way better than I could. But that gives you kind of an idea of, and if you want to read the simple story about that, it's in this article, and the real stuff is in Daniel's Rivera's stuff. Okay, but that's just one way of looking at it, and Ben Marlon will be showing you other ways of looking at dynamic models too, and as will Eric, I think. Okay, so this is prelude to what you guys have to do today, hopefully, and that's sort of begin to define your research question. There's a couple of ways of doing it. Now there's induction. You begin emotion recognition. You think that's something I'm really interested in dealing with, because if I know emotion, then I can deal with dysregulated eating, and that gets to the big goal, is obesity. And then there's deduction. These are going backwards, but they are. Anyway, you think, I want to do world peace. That's what I care about. And so aggression is a problem. So maybe I need to work on mindful spaces, right? So you've got to sort of define that small tip of the iceberg that you can work on. And I borrowed this from Bonnie. Thank you very much. Why remake this every time when you made it so beautifully? What's the larger framework and where can you make a dent? So behavior happens in these situations, right? There's the environmental policies, the social system, the individual. There's these various change mechanisms, all these health behaviors that you could choose, right? But remember that these happen in a context. And the way that you intervene is going to have to be nailed to the context that you choose, right? There's a really wonderful paper by a guy whose name I'm forgetting right now. Probably don't know it, I bet. And that is, he talks about how behaviors are really context specific. And what we do, certainly in obesity research, what we've done for years, decades, is bring people into the lab, teach them how to exercise in the lab, bring them in 3 days a week. We used to do this, give them an exercise program, and then send them back to their own environment. It's recidivism and drug in rehabilitation. You have to learn the behavior in the environment that you're going to use it. Otherwise, it falls apart. And I will find that paper and send it. He does a really good job of talking about it. And so the intervention that you choose, or if you choose to just observe, context is super, super important. And only now with mobile health technologies are we beginning to be able to do this. When you're zeroing in on a behavior that you want to intervene on, you have to think about the population that you're going to intervene on. So are you going to intervene on children? They have very different cognitive abilities than adults. Are you going to intervene? Is your population rural? Is your population urban? Is your population a community, a family, an individual? Is your population underprivileged? So you can't intervene on the whole world at once. Observe the Fitbit. If the Fitbit actually worked all by itself, I would be out of a job. Totally. So, and then you have to decide where. I already said this. But where are you going to intervene? Are you going to intervene in a home? Are you going to intervene in a school? Right? Decide that ahead of time. Okay. What's your outcome of interest? Now, I'm going to use obesity as an example because I'm an obesity researcher. Oh, I said that. Yes. Which population to study, which behavior, the behaviors and the determinants differ across populations. So if I am going to intervene on Jewish princesses of a certain age, there are some behaviors or dietary things that are just not relevant to me, not part of my cultural diet, right? So that's something that you have to take into account when you choose a population to work with. And are you choosing a healthy, are you preventing or treating? And can we even separate that out anymore? In obesity, that's pretty hard because such a high population such a high percentage of the population is overweight. Are you going to work with a diabetic population? These are really, really different. Which behaviors are related to the outcome? Choose your battles and where possible, make this evidence-based. So if you are going to tackle an entire diet, I'm going to tackle diet. You're going to lose that battle. I just tell you now, You could think about sugar. You could think about fruit and vegetable, although that's two different things, and usually it's better if you tackle them separately. But don't try and change the whole diet. You can think of caloric intake if you think that's the way to go, but be very specific, right? And then, while you are working in a transdisciplinary team, this is actually from a survey of my own team. And we were halfway through the research project, trying to understand eating behaviors. Right? Engineering student. When I said, okay, wait a minute, I feel like we're all surrounding the elephant and seeing different things. You're the one who's doing the sensing. What's eating to you? And he said, well, it's a bite. Nabil, you're part of this paper. It's a bite. And then the lead engineer who's like been running this team since day one says, no, it's a meal. Psychologists are going, meal? That's not even, that has no definition. There's no way to define a meal. What do you mean meal? The engineer says, from another team says, that's not a bite that you're measuring, that's a chew. And the behavior says, that looks like a hand motion to me because we're using watches. I'll show you in a minute. There's another engineer who actually does measure chews with another engineer in the room with a neck piece, a necklace. It's kind of gorgeous. Yes, Nabil, right over there. So then engineer 2 says, well, how about eating event? And behaviorists 1 and 2 then say, okay, how are we going to define that? Now we are halfway through the project. We're already measuring stuff. We already have data. We just have no idea how to interpret it. Right? So learn from my mistakes. And it's not like we went into this without discussing it first, but you have to keep talking to one another. One of the best ways to come downstairs, I find, with a transdisciplinary team is that, like, once a month, make sure that somebody presents to you what they're doing. And there are some disciplines who are less happy to show you a half-done algorithm than other disciplines, like psychologists, that say, I think maybe this. Want to talk? So there's all these different styles, too. So it's hilarious. We'll talk more about that. So this is our forthcoming review. After this happened, we thought, okay, what are other people doing? So, and Nabil is also a part of this review on 32 sensing studies that say that they're looking at eating and how they define that. 32 different ways, pretty much, with 32 different sensors. Anyway, forthcoming. So, back to key questions. What determinants are related to the behavior that you've chosen? So you choose an evidence-based theory that is related, that has had some success in the field. There will not be a theory that's had some success in the mobile health field, just beginning to get there. But there'll be bits and pieces of it. So as far as I'm concerned, you're allowed to snack from different theories, this construct, that construct. If we're looking at, diet, eating chocolate, and how that leads to obesity, we can start with this theory that's had some success. And we can measure all of these things, right? So then you've got to pare it down. Which constructs, behavior outcomes to intervene on, and thus measure, turn them into variables. And how to measure them. This is a new transdisciplinary world. How to measure these variables, it's changing all the time. And when people ask me, do you have a validated questionnaire for this ecological momentary assessment? Does everybody know what ecological momentary assessment is? Is there somebody who doesn't?
Oh, no, I know that.
I know you know, you're the guy. Okay. So we're good? So I get asked all the time for validated EMA questionnaires, and there aren't any. We don't even really know how to do that yet. So a lot of it is best guess, yeah?
Could you go ahead and explain the EMA?
Sure. So at Echolot's, I don't have my phone. Are you trying me? That's your bed. So ecological momentary assessment, why am I holding that thing? You guys can hear me, right? EMA is when I ask you a question and it gets sent to your phone. And I'm actually going to show you in my example several ways of doing that, okay? Is that good enough for now? All right, awesome. So how do we measure the constructs that we're interested in, or how do we measure, these variables, when? So the minute that I can get to you in your home, and I'm not continuously sensing, which is, I mean, there are very few continuous sensing things going on yet, as yet, because it's so hard with batteries. I mean, we have these accelerometers. That's kind of it. Everything else is, the hardest question in engineering is battery life, right? So you need to know when, how often, and in which context to measure a thing. The problem is, in this brave new world, we don't know the rate of change of these variables. We don't know what makes things change. We don't know a lot of this stuff yet. You know, I'm a data, I'm a person who likes a lot of data, sorry. And I will measure you 24/7, but it'll drive you out of your mind. So how do I know when's the right time? How do I measure without, of course, you always change, you know, theory, philosophy of science 101, you change that which you, and that is God. You change whatever you observe, but we don't want to change it too much, right? So, which technologies to use? That's changing all the time as technologies get better, as new technologies come out. Where can you measure ubiquitously? So where can you measure without people knowing that you're measuring? There are people who say ubiquitous is the way to go, and that's, you know, the more I can measure ubiquitously, the better. How do we feel about that? I like that face. That is a good face. I feel the same way about it. I think ubiquitous is great, but I think it's a Venn diagram of my experience versus what you can sense about my experience. So sometimes, I mean, you don't have to ask me about how much physical activity I do anymore, but you still have to ask me how I felt about it, because only I know that, right? I used to be able to say at these trainings, there's no such thing as sensing for tummy ache, but I think that there is now, right? William. Anyway, so like for instance, in my lab, salivary cortisol is a thing that people say measures stress, right? But we've done these back-to-back salivary cortisol stress questions, and they're correlated maybe 40.4, nice correlation. Did you get higher?
Yep.
Yes, 0.4. So it's a Venn diagram. So you have to, ubiquitous is good. You have to choose your battles again when you bother people. But remember, coming back to what Vivek said, it's empathy. There's a person in there, and you can't just sense all the things. What do you want on demand, and when, and where? The validated measure thing, I already talked about that. And also there's the problem of good enough. So, Fitbit, it's not perfect. It's not perfect data, but it might be good enough, depending on your research question. Right? If I'm trying to intervene on somebody, if I'm doing a research project on understanding caloric intake and output, then I need exact. But for intervening on walking, good enough, because it gives me within person changes. And that's really what we're starting to model, the individual person. But there is a role of more traditional measures. One of the things I'm fascinated about right now is engagement. How do we keep people using these technologies? And some of the work that Billy has done, who's flying for Israel, and some of the work that we're trying to do now is looking at traditional measures like personality. I've got all these microphones, I'm not going to use any of them. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. So traditional measures like personality, it's showing that some differences in personality can predict some things in engagement some of the time. So there's still a really good role for traditional measures. We just don't know what it is yet. Okay. New technologies are not magic. The best practices in development, design, deployment are really important. Technology can add fundamental knowledge, and vice versa, but we need theory, we need careful science, otherwise it is just toys. And it has to be theoretically seated. So one of the reasons that we can't use the data from some of the bigger companies the way that we'd like to, although it's informative, is that it's not scientifically seated. I don't have the other questions and the other data surrounding it to draw the conclusions I'd like to draw. Make sure your theories are explicit. I harken back to the slide about eating in. Also, everybody, engineers, everybody has an implicit theory about how they think behavior works. If I nail you to the ground, I'm sure I can get yours out of you, right? Make them explicit in your team so that everybody's on the same page, right? There are these assumptions, that, here's some assumption for you. The shorter the questionnaire, the better. Have we tested that? I work with people all the time who have this main assumption, it's gotten shorter. You look at Csikszentmihalyi's work in ecological monetary assessment, I don't know how he does it, but he gets people, him and Barbara, they get people to answer endless questions on their phone because they are so beautifully phrased. They make you feel like they care about you. Oh, so you do have to care about the people that you're working with. There's that, right? We need help with best measures. We're still working on it. We need to understand the mechanisms of change in real time, and we're just learning so much. So you need, on a team, you need expertise in specific populations. If you're going to be working with people in Tanzania, it's good if you have some researchers from Tanzania on your team. And I think that downtown LA is also a form of Tanzania. If you're going to be working on Skid Row, you better have people from there helping you. Engagement. How do we maintain engagement in the use of our technology? So as we get into this, I'm sure you guys all know that most Fitbits are in the drawer, right? Yes, right? Yes, Peter knows this. How do we keep people engaged? You need human-computer interaction expertise. You're going to be getting some of that from Pecha later in the week. The stuff that we're putting out there really can't be clunky or ugly. I can't begin to tell you how many teams I've been on, how many teams I'm on right now that don't want to spend the money on the artists and the HCI people. But people are not going to use this stuff. They are used to Disney. This is Hollywood, and Hollywood is everywhere now, right? They're used to very slick games, so this stuff has to work. There has to be some expertise in targeting and tailoring. Once when I was writing a grant, and the grants officer said to me, why do you have to tailor this mHealth stuff? It was based on tailoring it to a new population. This seemed to work in population A. Why is this necessary? And he then said to me, she did, them, so everybody uses an iPhone. I mean, those aren't tailored. I said, well, wait, have you seen my iPhone? The inside of my iPhone, it looks like my bedroom slippers. Nothing looks like, everybody's is different. We tailored ourselves. So tailoring is really important, and even more so in mental health. You want to keep people engaged because you have to make them feel like you care about them. Participatory design, which I'm sure you'll hear more about from Petra later. So involve the people, and from Eric, it's kind of the king of it. Involve the people in your work that you're going to be working with. You have to motivate people to want to give you their data. And in this day and age, and he shall not be named, everybody is a little worried about giving you their data. So you have to be trustworthy, and then you have to convince people to trust you. So ethical issues, privacy and safety, and I'm not going to talk about that. These are all just really important things because you're at the very beginning of this process that you have to keep in mind as you move forward. This is one of my favorite slides. I still have some time, right? The data that you're going to get. So when we get to the analyses section. Think about the data that you're getting as you start deciding what to measure and how to measure it. You know, the nature of the measure might be objective, might be self-report, maybe it's directly observed or it's indirectly inferred, maybe it's fast, maybe it's slow, maybe it's super precise, maybe it's incredibly inaccurate, maybe it changes fast, whatever variable you're looking at, or maybe it changes really slowly, like my habits. The trajectory of change might be linear, or it might be loopy. And all of these variables that you measure are likely going to be influencing one another and be influenced by time and context. So this is my case study. How much more time I got? I'm going to go fast. M2Fed is measuring and modeling family eating dynamics, and it was based on the fact that we don't know what people eat. We can ask people, we can observe people, we can sense people, we can take biological measures, we can grab their small data from the internet and all of that. But the bottom line is we don't know what people eat because they don't know and we can't measure it. So it is a rabbit hole. So we thought, okay, never mind. The person is in a complex system embedded in many ways. This is an important, confusing thing. Effects of things emerge and they persist, but they adapt to changes in the system and it's dynamic. And we thought, what can we get at that is not asking people what the heck they eat because they don't know and we can't measure it. So we thought family eating dynamics. These are things that have successfully been intervened upon, but that we could only understand through questionnaire or observation, direct observation, until mobile health. So mimicry, synchrony, if I take a bite, you take a bite. If I'm eating really fast and you eat really fast, especially if I'm your mom, that's been shown, right? This is something that we can look at in real time and intervene on. Modeling, if I eat healthy, my daughter will eventually eat healthy. Parenting styles have really been shown to influence diet and food environment, food choice. So family eating dynamics can be changed through interventions that also have impacted weight. So we chose our battles. We chose mimicry, modeling, and mood because they all start with an M. Well, maybe not. But food environment was really too hard. I didn't want to think about what people were eating. So, and parenting styles are hard to sense as of yet. So what we're looking at is this network systems dynamic model of family eating dynamics. And but what the bottom line is that if adult one is stressed, that might feed into child one's stress. That might feed into eating in the absence of hunger in child 2, for instance, right? But how do these things all work together? This is our cyber-physical system. That is a sort of a closed Internet of Things that we deployed in homes. So everybody got a base station, a smartwatch, and a phone, and there were some beacons in the house, beacons that pick up on either the watch or the phone signal so that we know where people are in the house. We hope that they would also do motion. They claim to, but that's not working. So we hope that we'd know what time people open their refrigerator, but we do know where they are. And we can measure ubiquitously the eating episode, which is now what we're calling it with the smartwatch. Speed of eating, who's in the room. We can't do the opening cabinets anymore, and we did speaker identification, but we dropped it because it was too intense for people to have microphones in the home. And so here is the EMA to get back to your question. We had it signal-driven or schedule-driven. So if we detected eating, that triggered a set of questions after making sure that are you really eating right now and are you done? That would trigger a set of questions. We would do that once an hour only. So if we detected a second eating event, we wouldn't ask any questions because we didn't want to drive people crazy. Once an hour in the home for 2 weeks. Yes, it was a lot, but we all did it ourselves first and survived. Try your own technology. And if there was not any eating detected in that hour, then it triggered a very short mood and stress questionnaire. on the schedule. So you got one thing an hour when you were home. And this is the triggering scheme, but I don't have time for that. And what we're looking for is these bendy points. So an angry tone that leads to faster eating in a child, faster eating will lead to obesity. Right, where we're looking for these nodes where we might be able to intervene. So this is an observational study because we know so little bit about this behavior in real time. This is what we want to know about eating, all of these things. And some of them we get to know and some of them we don't. But what I want you to understand is that this is a data storm of data coming in at all different speeds and slows and all different configurations. And we don't really know how to interpret this data. There are variables in there that we don't know about. My favorite story about that is the idea of engagement. Remember, we used to give you a questionnaire. Did you like this game? Yeah. Was it easy for you to use? Until some engineer taking a bath late at night thought, Eureka, I've got all this data on the back end. How long did you open the app? How long did you stay on the app? And so we redefined the word engagement using data that we've been throwing away. I don't have time for this. Are you going to do this later, Eric? No. Okay, I'm going to take the time then. So a multidimensional generalization space, or a state space, is, think of it this way. This is going to be the fast version. So this is the probability of walking, let's say. And this is my ability to self-regulate, let's say. And this is self-efficacy, let's say, and maybe there's weather in here somewhere. The bottom line is, if I'm feeling very strong, if I have strong self-efficacy at a particular moment, that helps my self-regulatory skills. So that if it's raining, I still might go out for a walk, right? Whereas if it's raining and I'm in a bad mood or drank too much last night, I might not go out for that walk. So a multidimensional generalization space is this blanket over these variables as they all move and shift in relationship to one another. It's kind of like a little animal crawling around under a blanket. Okay, never mind. Okay. I'm going to stop. I'm not going to tell you about cold hot models, maybe later. Understand, these are your takeaways. Understanding the behaviors you choose to intervene on is key. Choose your technologies, choose your theories. You really need a theory. Make sure it's explicit, not implicit within your group. And revisit it all the time because things change. Which behavior, which theories, which determinant, which context, which personalization might work for whom. Remember, you're working with individuals. We have a much better ability to work with individuals now to model individual behavior. So, idiographic rather than nomothetic. Context is king. Call me all the time. Don't forget that you're all looking at the same element. And